heading back over to the better teams in college basketball, like Duke and UNC. Going over to the Big 12, Kansas at Houston. Haslam makes this game closer to Houston minus 10. Total of 135 is his projection. My raw numbers closer to Houston minus 7.5. Another game among the three that we've discussed so far where the market will probably shade towards the home team. And keep in mind, Kansas covering against Houston earlier in conference play, winning that one at the Phog by 13 points. Kevin McCullough kind of going 180 from our perspective on the knee injury last week here on Outside Shots, because he not only played at Baylor in the Saturday game, but plays pretty efficiently against Kansas State on Tuesday night in a conference rivalry, and Kansas blowing out the Wildcats at home at the Phog. So Houston can get the outright Big 12 title with a win here when it comes to the regular season standings. Iowa State can still get a share of it. They play at Kansas State on Saturday. But some big injuries to note for Houston. Not only are they without Ramon Walker and Terrence Arsenault for the rest of the season, which was already known earlier in conference play, but Tugler is now out for the rest of the year as well. And Juwan Roberts, who got 7 stitches on his right hand last weekend, seemingly only playing with one hand. So you have a Kansas team that has a lot of issues, which I'm sure you'll hit on, but then Houston also banged up and limited depth-wise.
Yeah, this is a tough spot for Kansas, though, right? Because they've been pretty awful on the road this season. They rank 344th in Haslam's away from home metric, and if you've been fading them on the road this season, you're up money because they are 3-6 ATS on the road. But, like you noted with the Big 12 tournament coming up next week, if Kansas wins this game and Baylor beats Texas Tech, I think Kansas gets the number 4 seed. So they don't have to play on Thursday. So that's kind of a spot perspective that leans towards Kansas in this game. But at the same time, it's a terrible matchup for Kansas because they're just getting shelled on the boards against these good offensive rebounding teams, right? Like Cincinnati when they allowed 16 offensive rebounds, but the absence of Tugler is kind of big in that regard too. But Hunter Dickinson, at the same time, he's not the greatest rebounder in the world. He's 7 feet tall, but he plays like he's 6'1" sometimes. And I know his defensive rebounding metrics don't back that up, but I'm skeptical of him being able to box out this Houston team that just crashes the glass, man. And last time they played in February, they had 13 offensive rebounds. Tough spot. And, Kansas, they have the second lowest turnover rate in conference play, right? But they really scuffle against these high-pressure teams like Houston, where they turned it over 18 times in their last matchup, and then Marquette, who forced them into 18 turnovers back in December, I think it was. But Kansas they really struggle with these high-pressure defenses, right? And Houston might be able to get them at home. I don't know if I really want to lay like 10 points, because Haslam has this as a 10-point spread in favor of Houston. I don't know if I want to lay that with Houston, but what
if you get this closer to 7?
I think I'd consider it then. Right, if it's around 7, I would consider it. If it's closer to 10, I'm not laying 10 with Houston though. So if it's 7, I'll probably back Houston at this spot because Kansas is just so terrible on the road. They don't they don't limit offensive rebounds that well, so I would lay Houston 7. So
Hunter Dickinson, like you mentioned, bit of a liability on the boards, but 20 points against Houston in their last matchup. So I kind of look at it on the flip side here. I don't know how much the Big 12 tournament is going to mean to either team, honestly, just because Kansas wants McCullough healthy in the actual NCAA tournament, and Houston wants to rest because of how much they rely on their guards and how limited they are up front. They want to get Roberts healthy in his own right. But if Dickinson can get Roberts or Francis, one of the two, in foul trouble, that mitigates Houston's ability to dominate the glass even more with one of those guys on the bench, if not both, hampered by foul trouble just because of all the injuries Houston suffered, especially with Tugler in the last week. The other thing that makes me skeptical of Houston in the long term, maybe not so much in this game just because of home court and going for their first ever outright Big 12 regular season championship, Houston grades 296 across Division I in shot selection. An elite shot making team, I think top 55, but they also take a lot of very difficult shots. Jamal Shad, LJ Cryer, again, just super efficient shot makers, but limited on depth. If Roberts is still banged up in the big dance, I'm not super high on Houston. I'm not saying Sweet 16 exit, but you go back to the Villanova game 2 years ago in the Elite Eight. Houston didn't shoot well. I think they only made 1 3 in that game. Pretty wild when you look at the 3-point splits from that Elite Eight matchup, which sent Villanova to the Final Four before getting blown out by Kansas in that meeting. But if Houston faces another team that could space you out and can be efficient, while Houston will continue to get themselves maybe in poor shooting pockets with their guards, I don't know, man. Just something to note here. It depends on the bracket, which we say all the time. But just a couple of reasons why I'm not maybe as high on the Cougars as the market is. But in regards to Kansas's shooting, they rank 340th across Division I in three-point attempt rate, second worst three-point clip in Big 12 play at 32.1%. So how much are they really going to be able to space out Houston in this one unless you get a ton of three-point variance like Houston got in the first meeting?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Kansas doesn't really have good three-point shooting. You know, Furphy's the only one that they really have that can space it out and really burn you from deep. If they turn the ball over again, like they've turned it over against these high-pressure defenses before, that, you know, I am going to lean Houston in this game. It's a matter of whatever number we get right on open. If it's closer to 7, I'll lay 7. If it's closer to 10, I'm not touching it. So